Okay, well, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I want to talk a little bit about brachos this morning, two brachos in particular, or one in particular. But as a general introduction, uh, brachos exist basically to show appreciation for the world in which we live that Hashem has provided for us. And there are brachos for every possible situation. There are, of course, there are birchos mitzvah, what you do when you perform a mitzvah, like lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. There are brachos on every mitzvah. There are brachos on seeing things that are unusual, on hearing things. If you take a trip on an ocean liner, you see the ocean, you make a bracha. There's the Grand Canyon or a mountain, you make a bracha on the glorious things that God creates in nature. Seeing a comet, you make brachos when you smell things, when you taste things. There are many, many different brachos on almost every occasion. There are brachos for happy things, there are brachos for sad things. I want to focus a little bit on the bracha hatov v'hametiv, a bracha we don't make very often. Perhaps we should, but it comes from our lack of understanding of the nature of the halacha of brachos. If you hear good news that affects yourself and somebody else or other people, you make a bracha of hatov v'hametiv. If you hear a bracha, if you hear something that only affects you, then you have the bracha of shechayanu. If you buy a new suit, if you hear good news, we'll talk about this a little more in detail. But shechayanu is a bracha that you make for good things that happen to you personally. Hatov v'hametiv is done when it affects more than one person. Although there are exceptions. For example, very often we are a guest in someone's house on Shabbos, and they open up several different bottles of wine. So you drink one cup of wine from one bottle. If somebody brings another bottle of wine, and it's a good bottle of wine, you've already made Bore Pri Hagafen perhaps, but you'd make a bracha tov v'hametiv on that second cup of wine from the new bottle. There are a lot of interesting halachos about it. One of the most interesting machloksim between Ashkenazim and Sfardim and contemporary poskim, when you hear about if your wife gave birth to a baby boy, so you make a bracha of shechayanu. If your wife gave birth to a baby girl, at one time, you wouldn't make that bracha because it was considered, a girl wasn't considered as important as a boy for whatever reason in the culture in different countries. Lately, however, Mishnah Brewer and others say, no, any child, you'd make that bracha. But it's interesting. One of the considerations, if a girl is born, well, you're worried about a dowry, you're worried about a shidduch. So it isn't all good. I mean, it is good, but there are some negative aspects to it which fit into that particular halacha. Fortunately, that has changed. And Mr. Brewer and other contemporary poskim would make the bracha of shechayanu because obviously any child being born is a cause for joy. Bad news, of course, is a die in MS. And whether you make with Shein v'malchus, if it's a relative, if it's not a relative, there are different concerns there. I want to focus. And I don't want to get too tied up in this boy-girl thing, but I want to focus on one aspect, a fascinating halakhic discussion on the nature of shechayanu. When you buy a house, it's a purchase that people make, not too often, but when you buy a house, according to Shulchan Aruch, or any valuable object, perhaps even a car, you'd make shechayanu. It's a good thing to have a house. You'd make shechayanu. However, If the house is paid for in full, no question, make Shechianu. What if, and this is the case in most situations, houses come with a mortgage? Most people are not happy about having to pay a mortgage payment every month. Does that negative feeling about having to pay a mortgage somehow vitiate, somehow affect or weaken the joy of purchasing the house? You have a positive and you have a potential negative. You might incur debt to pay your mortgage. There's a certain amount of worry or perhaps stress. The halachic discussion concerns the nature of a bracha when you have mixed emotions. You're happy to buy a house. You're happy to buy a car. But if it comes with payments, which you're worried about making, that might, to a certain extent, diminish the joy that you experience in the purchase. And this is a machlokas of contemporary poskim. And a lot of interesting halachos come into play here, discussions. For example, Shulchan Aruch says that if a person's father dies and leaves the son his estate, so you'd make dayan ha'emes about the passing of your father, but you'd also make shehecheyanu, acknowledging the benefit that you're also receiving at the same time. So you have a double, two things happening at the same time: the loss of a father, but the inheritance of the estate. Two conflicting emotions requiring two totally different brachos that Shulchan Aruch says you have to make. One second. Excuse me. Now, death and inheritance are two distinct and different emotions, and you can simultaneously experience sorrow and joy. It's a weird thing. But, argues one posek, that purchasing real estate with a mortgage is a single phenomenon, for want of a better term, even though it gives rise to conflicting emotions. So, for example, at a bris milah, and then I'm talking now about minhag among the Ashkenazim. Sephardim have a whole different set of customs. But among most of us, we do not say shehecheyanu at a bris. We've all attended bris, lots of prayers, lots of tefillos, but no shehecheyanu. Why not? Because as much joy as there is in bringing a child in Briso Shel Avram into the covenant with the Jewish people, the child does experience a certain amount of discomfort, perhaps even pain. So there you have a conflicting emotion, if you will, or experience, which would eliminate the bracha. Now, again, there are other poskim, the Sephardim would say shehecheyanu at a bris. We don't. So here you have two different scenarios. In one case, it's debated whether you'd make shehecheyanu and dayan emes at the same time. The halacha is that you would. But at a bris, we don't make a shehecheyanu because we accept the fact that a second emotion could overpower the first emotion. And this is the essence of that machlokas. There are some who have intermediate positions that Rabbi Yoshev, 20th century posek, says that no purchase represents total pleasure, because whenever you spend money to buy something, you're diminishing your resources. Nevertheless, the purchase does bring pleasure. So when you assume a mortgage, it may be an unwelcome thing, and it may be a diminution of your resources, but nevertheless, it incurs an obligation of future expenditure of funds, but it does not negate, according to Rabbi Yoshev, the fact that you have a negative does not negate the positive experience of the purchase. So you have different. One position says you cannot have two conflicting emotions at the same time, and the other position says yes, you can. One, you can't have one without the other, and one perhaps is more important than the other. The joy of purchasing a house, the joy of purchasing a boat, or if you're if you're a businessman and you buy a condo, or you're buying an office building, whatever the case might be, there is joy. There is loss of resources, but the joy, perhaps on future income, overrides the initial diminution of your resources, and it does not negate the pleasure experienced in the purchase. So stress and anxiety. Now, if on the other hand, and this some posts can point out, if you are not sure that you can make the mortgage payments, then that's a real shaila, whether you would make sheikh yadu, because your pleasure is really not 100%. You buy the house hoping that your job will come true, hoping that you'll have the resources to pay the mortgage, but you're not really 100% sure. So in that case, that might reverse the sheikh yadu aspect of that. The only other thing that I want to add to this whole discussion about sheikh yadu when buying a house, when do you make the bracha? Let's assume that you buy a house and you have the resources to make the monthly mortgage payment, or a car for that matter, or a boat, or whatever the case major purchase might be, and you have the resources. But talking about a house, when would you make the bracha? At the closing? Or, as many would suggest, you could only make the bracha once there are mezuzos on all the doors in the house, and then it's fit to be lived in. Then you make the sheikh yadu. And that's the only caveat. Everybody agrees you buy a house, you make sheikh yadu. But the question of when you make it, it would not be at the closing. You might shake hands and say mazel tov, but you wouldn't make the bracha of sheikh yadu until the mezuzahs are in the house and you can move in and live in the house properly.
Well, Ali,
yes.
Would there be a bracha to be made once you pay off your mortgage completely?
That would definitely be a sheikh yadu moment when the mortgages are fully paid off. Although it's an interesting debate if it would be sheikh yadu or hatov hametiv, because it's not just you that is celebrating, but you're also creating a benefit for your children who will inherit the house free and clear. So that might be an interesting question when you tear up the mortgage and you made your last mortgage payment. Which bracha do you make, sheikh yadu or hatov hametiv? It's interesting debate, but clearly the halachos of sheikh yadu. Sometimes people are too free with sheikh yadu, and sometimes they don't use it enough. And we have to know when and where. There are many different types of brachos that we simply aren't always conscious of making. Last night there was thunder and lightning. That's an opportunity to make two different brachos: a bracha of the thunder and a bracha of the lightning. If you are the presence of if you happen to attend the inauguration and you see a president, you make a bracha. If you see a king, you make a bracha. If you see a great Talmud Chacham, you make a bracha. You also make a bracha if you see a stunningly beautiful person or a horribly deformed person. These are all occasions for a bracha. There is brachos of seeing, brachos of smell, brachos of emotion. There are Chazal intuitively understood that man has to be grateful for everything in this world. Brachos teach us that we should not take things for granted. And that's why you have to learn which bracha you make on which occasion. But I thought the discussion on buying a house or a major purchase is a fascinating one, because you have what determines which bracha you make when there are conflicting emotions. There's joy and sadness in the same event. Now, for a bris, we don't make shechiyanu. But when you inherit property because the parent dies, you make two brachos, dayan emes and shechiyanu, because you've inherited something. If you have inherited something, so this is just a little insight. Yes, Jay.
Yeah, if you're downsizing, say shechiyanu on that house as well.
I don't understand the question. If you're downsizing,
if you're selling your nice big fancy house in Fairlawn or whatever,
right? You're selling the house.
Yeah, and you're going into condominium, into an apartment.
Okay. I think you would probably make the shechiyanu, because by downsizing, you're saving money. You don't need a big house anymore. All right, the kids are all married and are on their own. Right. You don't need a big house or a big backyard. So you in a sense, you're, first of all, by selling the house, you make money on the house, especially if the mortgage already been paid. So you have a couple of dollars to spare even after you buy the condo, perhaps. Well, what condo prices today, I'm not sure, but again, it would be the same situation. You are expressing joy and gratitude to Hashem for coming into a windfall, perhaps a sizable amount of money, and it also the emotional impact of not having to worry about taking care of a house. You go to a condo, they do everything for you. They'll shovel the snow, they'll take care of the heat or whatever. So you don't have to worry about the boiler breaks. It's all covered, hopefully. So again, any change in status that brings you joy would occasion a shechiyanu type of bracha. But again,
Wally,
yes, Nathan.
How about a get? A man gives his wife a get.
Interesting question. If a man gives a wife a get, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer. If you dissolve a marriage, there could be joy on both sides. That
but
is,
he can't say Baruch Shepatrani because he has to pay alimony.
Yeah. That is a very interesting question. If you get a divorce, I'd have to find out. That's a very interesting question. Do you make a bracha on a divorce?
Don't ask Ronnie.
No, I won't. But I will find out. That's a very interesting question, and I'll have to get back to you on that. But the Gemara says that when a divorce does happen, God cries. So it's sad when a marriage falls apart. So I don't know if that would occasion shechiyanu.
You said before that we don't say shechiyanu at a bris, but the Sephardim do. I believe.
Sephardim do, yes.
So,
Sephardim do make a shechiyanu, and they do a lot of other things in the bris that we don't do. They have certain, and even amongst Sephardim there are differences. A lot of Sephardim involve hadassim in their bris. They take myrtle branches that they use for extra brachos or some other reasons that they use. But it's interesting. A divorce is generally not viewed as an occasion for joy.
Mhm.
And I would think that would kind of vitiate the need for a shehecheyanu. So I would think not. I would think not. The Gemara says that the Mizbeach sheds tears when there's a divorce. Now, again, the reality is, and sometimes a divorce is a good thing, especially when a marriage should never have taken place in the first time. But so off the top of my head, I would think you don't make a shehecheyanu when there's a divorce. But it's an interesting question because the way we look at divorce today and the way we looked at divorce in the time of the Gemara is very, very different. Because for a woman to get divorced, it's hard to get remarried. And for a woman to be on her own in ancient times was a very, very difficult situation, which is why they increased the ksuba amount tremendously during the Middle Ages in Ashkenazi communities. So that in case there would be a divorce, the woman would have some financial resources. But it's an interesting question. But I think from a contemporary perspective, it's very different from the way the halacha looks at divorce. Divorce is never looked upon as a good thing unless there are necessary reasons that he beats his wife or so forth, and they have to get divorced, or it was a bad marriage to begin with. And this takes us into the whole other topic, which I'm not going to get into today. I think we spoke about it once before, about during the shidduch process, if you know something about a chassan or a kala that would break the shidduch, are you obligated to tell them about it, the spouses or the individuals themselves? Is that lashon hara? And unfortunately, we know many, many situations where they knew something about the chassan or the kala that would have broken the shidduch, but they didn't want to, destroy the shidduch, so they didn't say it, and they wound up with divorce, a few weeks later, because it was really not a good deal. So the lashon hara aspect, if you know something, say something, especially in a potential marriage, because you're dealing with lives.
Wally,
Yes.
in the situation where you hear that someone died or someone inheriting, which bracha do you make first, Daina Emes or the Shehecheyanu?
Daina Emes.
Because if they didn't die.
Make Daina Emes first, and then if there's an estate or money, then you say Shehecheyanu. I mean, it's the whole topic is based on the fact that you can have two contradictory emotions existing at the same time, and which takes precedence, or are they both equal? And they have different views among poskim just because of that machlokas. But it's fascinating because there are many, many scenarios like a death and inheritance when these two brachos come up. So it's just, I find it to be a very fascinating discussion. We normally think you make a bracha if X happens, or you see something, or you smell something. But what if you have two things at the same time? Now, again, you'd make two. If, for example, you're hiking up this mountain trail, and there's a beautiful vista overlooking the valley in the next mountain range. At the same time, you're smelling fragrant flowers. You'd make two brachos. You make a bracha on the fragrance that you're smelling, and you make a bracha on seeing, Osa Masa Bracious, a beautiful scene. I remember we were traveling in the Rocky Mountains during the wintertime in Colorado. And we got to this huge mountain pass where there was 20 feet of snow on each side of the road. And they just cleared the road. The bus stopped. Everybody got out of the bus. And we looked over the Rocky Mountains. And we all made a bracha of Osa Masa Bracious because it was absolutely stunning. Same thing when you go on an ocean liner. You see, it's a Yom HaGadol. These are wonders of nature that we shouldn't take for granted. Anyway,
Wally,
brachos, we should only make brachos on happy things.
Wally,
Yes, Nathan.
can a person, in other words, that would be whether it's a Shechianu or not, would depend on the happiness and joy of a person. And two people might have different opinions or different feelings about a certain occurrence. So is one person allowed to make the Shechianu if he feels good about it, but another person would not if he doesn't feel good about the same event?
Yeah, I would say if a person, if it brings joy to a person, he makes Shechianu. If it doesn't bring joy to a person, for example, if a person is a millionaire and he makes a good purchase and he gets a few $1,000s extra, he wouldn't make a Shechianu on that because it's not that big of a joy to him, no big deal. But the average person makes a couple $1,000s, wins a lottery ticket, he'd make Shechianu.
Okay.
So it isn't one suit fits all. There are different nuances, and it affects every individual. Is affected different. If the individual is affected, you make the bracha. If the individual is not that affected, you don't make the bracha. It's as simple as that. Winning a lottery ticket, if a person gets $500 on a lottery ticket, you make Shechianu. If a person is very, very wealthy and $500 doesn't mean much to him, he wouldn't make Shechianu.
Well, what about a couple that has a baby boy,
right?
The first time, and years they've been trying to have this child.
Then you definitely make Shechianu. No question
so,
about it.
All right. So, in spite of the fact that we don't normally do it, they would do it.
Oh, wait. Why don't we do it?
I thought you said that in the case of a bris.
At a bris, you wouldn't make a Shechianu, but when a child is born, definitely you make Shechianu.
I meant to say a bris.
At a bris, you don't. The Ashkenazic practice is not to make a Shechianu because the baby feels pain at the bris. But when the baby is born, you would definitely make a Shechianu.
Okay, all right. I meant to say bris.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I give you all a bracha to have a wonderful day and a great year.
Amen.
Thank you, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.